After a couple of days away, I'm back with my next Overwatch League 2020 team preview video, which today will be taking a look at the London Spitfire. Nearly all of their 2018 championship roster that had remained with the team in 2019 has now been released or traded, with their spots largely being handed to a mix of promising tier 2 talent, as well as some more unknown quantities. With this massive change of direction, are London destined to fall to the back of the pack, or is there more to this team that initially meets the eye? With the Spitfire, we return to a side that has been in the league since the inaugural season in 2018. That year they came in with high expectations due to the core of their roster being made up from the Apex Season 4 winners GC Busan, an accolade which saw many consider them early favourites alongside Seoul and New York for the championship. London enjoyed a strong first two stages, reaching the stage title matches on both occasions, including their Stage 1 final victory over the Excelsior by virtue of a reverse sweep. After losing to Philly in the Stage 2 semis though, their display started to tail off for the remainder of the season, resulting in a poor Stage 3 and 4 that were hampered by inconsistency. This left them only 5th at the end of the regular season, and after losing their first playoff series to the Gladiators, they looked completely out of the running, with their bags packed to go home. However, this is when the Spitfire would find form and go on an incredible run that would see them make it all the way to the grand final, with their victory against the Philadelphia Fusion there crowning them the Overwatch League's inaugural season champions. London didn't make too many changes to their roster ahead of the 2019 season. Yet, rather than the team performing to a championship level, they again struggled in the regular season with inconsistency, making only the Stage 2 playoffs, with their other stages being very average by comparison. And consequently, the side finished the regular season only 7th. Quite a few people expected them to flick a switch in the playoffs though, after they sneaked past Shanghai in an incredible series during the play-ins. There wasn't to be a repeat of 2018 however, as the Spitfire suffered back-to-back playoff defeats to New York and then San Francisco, which eliminated them, putting an end to what was a very uninspired title defence last year. So, in pursuit of a return to glory, what have they done in terms of their roster this off-season? Well, they've clearly hit the reset button by blowing up almost the entirety of their former 2018 All-Star lineup. At DPS, all 3 of their 2019 DPS players have left, with Guard being released, Birdring joining the LA Gladiators, and Prophet being picked up by the Seoul Dynasty. In their places, the team has signed 2 contenders players, Glister from Gen G, who will be 18 by the time the season starts, and Shui from Runaway, as well as a couple of unknown players in Babel from BM Hawk and Although from Gen S, one of the academy sides of Gen G, if that makes sense. Moving on to the tanks, their 2019 starting duo, Gesture and Fury, are also gone, with Gesture heading to Seoul alongside Prophet, whilst Fury has been acquired by the Philadelphia Fusion. For 2020, London have signed JMac and Bernard from the contenders sides LG Yahuya and Fusion University, but also a couple of other lesser known contenders players, in Cleston from Team Griffin and Jihoon from Bubble Burster Gaming. Lastly, in regard to their supports, we finally find the only survivor of the 2019 roster, Crillon, with their other options from last year, Nuss and Quartermain being released, whilst Bedosin has also joined the Dynasty. To round out the roster, the Spitfire have signed Highly for once the other way from Seoul, Fuse from Fusion University, and then Sanguinar from Gen B, another one of those academy sides from Gen G. This is a really confusing roster to get your head around, with so many unknown and unproven names joining London for the 2020 season. Clearly they wanted to restart and work with a young roster of talent and potential that the coaching staff could look to develop and mould, rather than paying lots of money to keep hold of their all-star roster that despite success in 2018, has to be fair been inconsistent and at times average in the last 2 regular seasons. In terms of the coaching staff though, on paper the Spitfire have put together a very experienced group that clearly hand-picked the players they want to work with and incorporate into the lineup. Agape has been promoted to head coach after working as an assistant for the team last year, and he's been joined by Pavane, the former head coach of New York, as well as an awesome guy in Twinkle. So given the wealth of experience between them, one would hope that this new coaching staff is able to make things work and establish a new identity for the Spitfire in 2020, with this group having more of a chance to develop the players they've specifically chosen from largely young and unproven backgrounds. That said, whilst it may be easier for them to get their new rookies to follow their coaching and instruction, compared to had they tried to instill a new playing philosophy or style onto older veterans, Agape and his team will still have plenty of work on their hands to get everyone on the same page, and London's success or failure in 2020 will, at least in my opinion, rest rather heavily on how these coaches are able to develop and improve their players over the course of the season. But why don't we now take a closer look at the players joining the team itself, and as usual, we'll kick things off at the DPS position. Before I mention the additions though, I of course need to talk about how the Spitfire lost Prophet this off-season. When a player is in the conversation as perhaps one of the best players in the game, then trying to find a replacement for them is going to be near on impossible. Prophet was one of the team's best players for the past 2 seasons, being one of the main reasons why they were able to win the Overwatch League in 2018. Last year as well, certainly an argument can be made that he had to carry London for a lot of the 2019 season alongside Fury, who I'll get onto later, so whilst the huge amount of money the organisation received for him may lessen the loss, it's possible that the Spitfire may never field a player of his ability across so many heroes ever again. It's not all doom and gloom, however, as by comparison the departures of Guard and Birdring are much less of an issue. What's more importantly, their marquee signing Glister genuinely has the potential to one day compete at Prophet's level. It's not an exaggeration to say that Glister is an insanely talented contenders player with the rare ability to not only flexibly play most DPS heroes, but at the same time also have incredible mechanics as well. I was very surprised to see Seoul let him go from their academy, as with the right coaching and development, he has the talent to become one of the stars of the Overwatch League over the next few seasons, and could certainly be in the running for Rookie of the Year in 2020. By no means is he an end product, and his promise could hit a barrier at the Overwatch League level, but from what I've seen, on paper he's exactly the player London needed to bring in to at least try and fill the hole on their roster following the departure of Prophet, so he's definitely a player to watch. We shouldn't get too carried away though, as whatever his ability, Glister will still need players around him. Shui has had moments on Runaway, but mainly on Brig, before being benched more recently, so I can't say I'm overly confident that he will shine on stage next year, and in my opinion, he still has a lot to prove. Babel and Although, meanwhile, are complete wildcards who I've honestly got no read on, having not watched any of their previous play. If Glister and one of the others play well and show promise, the Spitfire could have a very exciting DPS line that could catch us by surprise. But right now there are just too many question marks to get a good read on how the DPS will perform. So like the rest of this team, we'll need to see some of their matches before we can be confident about both these players' quality and potential. As for the tanks, whilst Gesture could prove to be a big loss if Winston returns to the meta, to me, the bigger loss this off-season is their off-tank Fury. Like Prophet, he carried the Spitfire at times last season, and is undoubtedly still one of the best players at his position in the league, so he's another whose former spot on the team will be hard to replace. That said, in Bernard they have, like Glister, a player whose promise and potential might prove to not have such a huge drop-off following Fury's loss. Bernard has looked really good on Fusion University over the past couple of years when in NA, but perhaps he didn't shine as much when the team struggled in Korea. Compared to Glister, I have much lower expectations of Bernard after his more recent displays, but I won't discount his promise and upside, so if the coaching staff can get him to return to his former level of performance and then develop him further, London could have an off-tank that can compete at one of the most high-level positions in the league. A lot of the tank line's success, however, will fall onto the shoulders of JMac. He was promising and successful in Chinese contenders in 2019, but whilst domestically he's been great, my concerns come with his team's underachievement on the international stage, both at the Pacific Showdown and at the Gauntlet. Whilst that looks like it may have been more down to some of his teammates, he still has to prove himself and provide some stability, as without him being a solid foundation at main tank, this inexperienced squad could collapse around him, and this will be no easy task, as JMac finds himself under pressure to succeed, with the team having no real backup at his position. With their other two options, Clestine apparently has shown some flashes of promise in the past, but is still an unknown. But Jihoon is someone I think we should keep an eye on, seeing his career's potential answer to Armin, a ball specialist who was one of the driving forces behind his team's challenge in Chinese contenders last year. He gives London a pivot should their coaching staff want to utilise ball in the current meta, or indeed if they want to try and take more of a Chengdu approach next season. Either way, again there are players here whose potential should inspire fans if it's realised properly next season, but at the same time there are a lot of ifs, and I would be silly to assume that the tank position will be taking leaps forward from the outset, before we've even had a chance to see them play. Finally, we need to quickly discuss the support line, which is a real mixed bag. Fuse is another that has shown potential on Fusion University in the past, but compared to his other teammates, I get the impression that he was never considered a star, rather one of their weaker members. Considering who else London have at main support, he has a good shot at starting, so his level of play will need to step up if he doesn't want to be seen as a major weakness again. As for Crillon, I don't really know what to say. In many ways he's becoming a legend by just staying with the team for a third straight year. We've only had a small chance to see him play on stage, where he's looked okay, but he must have a lot of potential if Agape has decided to keep him on, whilst letting go of everyone else, and I'd just like to see him get a good run of games at some point this season, to really get a gauge of his real ability. One thing about the flex support position though, is that it has the most experienced players at this level on the team, with Crillon, but now also Hailey. Last year he was okay on Sol, but from my perspective he didn't look better than Ryu Jae-hong, who started more consistently over him. Hailey in terms of his mechanics looked good, but his decision making wasn't always the best. However, as I mentioned, it is at least nice to see some OWL experience on the roster, and both he and Crillon could end up helping each other develop through a competitive contest for the starting flex support spot. Lastly there's Sangwana, another complete unknown that I can't really comment on, but like others he must have impressed in trials. If the coaches can get him to perform well on stage, he could end up being one of many diamonds in the rough that the Spitfire have unearthed this off-season. Overall, the London Spitfire are undoubtedly a very strange team, and the direction they've taken has definitely alienated fans by budgeting and losing their stars to then build this largely unknown lineup. Contrary to what a lot of fans have said, I think there are positives though, especially in the form of Bernard and Glister. I wouldn't write this team off as one of the worst in the league, because they definitely have potential to surprise everyone and be a quietly good team, perhaps seeing them just sneak into the play-ins, taking advantage of the fact that most of their players are a mystery to everyone else in the league. This works both ways though, and there is a real possibility that the Spitfire end up being the dumpster fire that many are predicting if things go wrong. The determining factor for me will be the coaches, who will need to validate a lot of the pickups they've made by making us see the London players develop and improve as the season progresses, although I expect them to have a bumpy time about it, but we'll have to wait and see. But for now though, that's all I've got to say on the London Spitfire ahead of the Overwatch League 2020 season, and if you have reached the end of the video, then I'd like to thank you for watching. If you have enjoyed, then please be sure to like, subscribe and follow me on my Twitter or at my Discord so you don't miss out on future videos, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.